It's just a joke, Alex, relax. That's what my wife told me when she drove off and left me standing in a rest stop parking lot 200 miles from home. No wallet, no phone. Just me and a note that said, "Find your way back, city boy." My name is Alexander. I'm 37. I work in construction management for Ravens Park Ventures in Spokane, Washington. I've been married to Vanessa for 9 years. Her sister Jocelyn has always been trouble, the kind of woman who thinks cruelty is comedy, and Vanessa laughs along every single time. I stood there for 20 minutes before I realized they weren't coming back. The sun was brutal. My shirt stuck to my back. Cars flew past on the highway, and not one of them slowed down. I thought about calling someone, but my phone was in Vanessa's glove box. She knew that. Jocelyn knew that. They planned it. I started walking, found a gas station 3 miles down the road. The clerk let me use the phone after I explained what happened. I called my buddy Trevor, who lived about an hour away. He didn't ask questions, just said he'd come get me. While I waited, I bought a bottle of water with the 2 crumpled dollars I found in my jacket pocket. I sat outside on a curb and replayed the whole thing in my head. Vanessa had been smiling when she pulled away, not nervous, not guilty, smiling. Trevor showed up around 4 p.m. He took one look at me and shook his head. "Your wife did this?" "Her and Jocelyn." "Man, that's messed up." I didn't say much on the drive back. Trevor tried to make small talk, but I wasn't in the mood. I just stared out the window and thought about how many times I'd let things slide. How many times Vanessa and her sister had ganged up on me and I'd just taken it because that's what you do when you love someone. You take the hits, you keep your mouth shut. But this was different. This wasn't teasing. This wasn't a harmless prank. They left me stranded in the middle of nowhere with no way to get home. And they thought it was funny. By the time we got back to Spokane, it was almost 9 p.m. Trevor dropped me off at the house. The lights were on inside. I could hear laughter through the front door. I walked in. Vanessa was on the couch with Jocelyn. They were drinking wine and scrolling through their phones. My mother-in-law, Patricia, was in the kitchen. She looked up when I came in and smiled like nothing had happened. "Alexander, you made it back. Good for you." I didn't respond. I just walked past her and headed for the bedroom. Vanessa called after me, but I didn't stop. I needed a minute. Maybe more than a minute. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the wall. My hands were shaking, not from anger, from something else. Something I couldn't quite name yet. Vanessa came in a few minutes later. She leaned against the doorframe with her arms crossed. "You're seriously mad about this?" I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time in years I didn't recognize the woman standing in front of me. "Yeah," I said. "I am." She rolled her eyes. "It was a joke, Alex. God, you're so sensitive." I didn't say anything. She waited for a response, but when she didn't get one, she turned and walked out. I stayed in the bedroom for the rest of the night. I could hear them out in the living room, still laughing, still drinking, still acting like nothing was wrong. At some point, I fell asleep with my clothes on. When I woke up the next morning, Vanessa was already gone. She left a note on the kitchen counter. "Went shopping with Jocelyn. Be back later." I crumpled it up and threw it in the trash. That was 3 weeks ago. Things have been strange since then. Vanessa doesn't talk to me much anymore. When she does, it's short, clipped, like she's annoyed I even exist. Jocelyn comes over more often now. Sometimes they whisper when I'm in the room. Sometimes they stop talking altogether when I walk in. Patricia visits too. She's always been cold toward me, but lately there's something else. Something sharper. She watches me when she thinks I'm not looking. She smiles when I catch her. I started noticing other things too. Small things. Like how Vanessa's phone is always face down now. How she takes calls in the other room. How she's been meeting up with Jocelyn more than usual. And then there's Patricia. She's been overly nice lately. Too nice. The kind of nice that makes your skin crawl. Last week she brought over dinner. Said she wanted to spend time with us. She sat at our table and asked me about work, about my day, about how I was feeling. I answered her questions, but the whole time, I felt like I was being studied. like she was looking for something. Before she left, she hugged me, tight, held on a little too long. "You're a good man, Alexander," she said. "Vanessa's lucky to have you." It didn't sound like a compliment, it sounded like a warning. I've been keeping my head down since then, going to work, coming home, not making waves. But I'm not stupid. I know something's going on. I just don't know what yet. Yesterday, Vanessa told me her family is having a barbecue this weekend. Said I had to come. Didn't ask. Told. I agreed. What else was I going to do? But as I stood there in the kitchen watching her text Jocelyn with that same smile she had when she drove away, I realized something. This isn't over. Whatever they started 3 weeks ago when they left me stranded in the middle of nowhere, it's not finished yet. And I'm starting to think the real prank hasn't even happened yet. I met Vanessa 10 years ago at a coffee shop in downtown Spokane. She was sitting by the window reading a book with a cup of tea in front of her. I was there picking up an order for the crew. She looked up when I walked past her table, and that was it. 3 months later, we were dating. A year after that, we were engaged. Her family was different from mine. Louder, more involved. My parents had been gone for a while. My dad passed when I was 23. My mom followed 2 years later. So when I met Vanessa's family, I thought I was getting something I'd lost. A place to belong. Patricia seemed to like me at first. She called me son. She invited me to dinners and holidays. She asked about my job and acted interested when I talked about construction projects. But looking back now, I'm not sure she ever really liked me. I think she just tolerated me because Vanessa wanted me around. Jocelyn was a different story. From the beginning, she made it clear she didn't think I was good enough for her sister. She'd make comments about my job, about my clothes, about the truck I drove. She called me boring, said I was too serious. Vanessa always laughed it off, said that's just how Jocelyn was, that I shouldn't take it personally. But it was personal. Every jab, every joke, every time she rolled her eyes when I spoke. And Vanessa never defended me, not once. I told myself it didn't matter, that I was the one Vanessa chose, that Jocelyn's opinion didn't change anything. But it wore on me, year after year, little by little. The prank 3 weeks ago wasn't the first time they'd done something like this. 2 years ago, they hid my truck keys the morning I had to be at a job site by 6 a.m. I tore the house apart looking for them. I was an hour late, almost lost the contract. When I finally found them, they were in the freezer, frozen inside a block of ice. Vanessa thought it was hilarious. Last year they told me we were going to a family dinner. I showed up in a suit. Turns out it was a casual backyard thing. Everyone else was in jeans and t-shirts. I looked ridiculous. Vanessa and Jocelyn laughed about it for weeks. I never said anything, I just took it. Because that's what you do when you love someone, you take the hits. But the rest stop was different. That wasn't embarrassment. That was danger. I could have been hurt. I could have been stranded there for hours, days even. And they didn't care. When I got home that night, I expected an apology, or at least some acknowledgement that they'd gone too far. But there was nothing. Just laughter. Just whine. Just Vanessa acting like I was overreacting. That's when I started paying attention. Vanessa's been different since then. Distant. She doesn't ask me about work anymore. Doesn't ask me how I'm doing. She spends most of her time on her phone or with Jocelyn. And when I try to talk to her, she brushes me off. Last week I found a receipt in her purse. It was from a hotel in curate. 2 rooms, paid for with our joint account. When I asked her about it, she said it was a girls' trip, that she and Jocelyn needed some time away. I didn't push it, but I knew she was lying. Patricia's been coming around more too. She never used to visit without calling first, but now she just shows up. She brings food. She asks questions. She watches me like she's waiting for something. A few days ago, she asked me if I was happy. I was in the garage working on the truck. She walked in with a glass of iced tea and handed it to me. "Are you happy, Alexander?" I stopped what I was doing and looked at her. "Why are you asking me that?" She smiled. "Just curious." You seem stressed lately." I took a sip of the tea and went back to the truck. "I'm fine." She didn't leave. She just stood there watching me. "You know, Vanessa's been through a lot," she said. "She needs someone who can handle her, someone who can keep up with her." I didn't respond. "She's strong-willed, like her father." I glanced at Vanessa's dad, Gerald. He was standing in the driveway watering the lawn. He never said much, never got involved. He just did what Patricia told him to do. "Yeah," I said. "I've noticed." Patricia laughed. "You're a good man, Alexander. I hope Vanessa knows that." She left after that, but her words stayed with me. The way she said it, the way she smiled, like she knew something I didn't. That night, I went through Vanessa's phone. I didn't want to. I hated doing it. But I had to know. There were texts between her and Jocelyn. Most of them were about me, about how boring I was, how predictable, how easy it was to mess with me. And then I saw a message from Patricia. "He's still clueless. Let's see how far we can push him." I put the phone down and sat in the dark for a long time. I didn't know what to do, didn't know what to say. So I did nothing. But I started paying closer attention. I started noticing patterns. Vanessa and Jocelyn would talk in low voices when they thought I wasn't listening. Patricia would stop by and ask strange questions. Gerald would avoid eye contact with me whenever I was around. And then came the invitation to the barbecue. Vanessa told me it was just a family thing, nothing big. But the way she said it made me uneasy, like she was setting something up. I didn't say no. I couldn't. But as I stood there, watching her smile at me the same way she smiled when she drove off 3 weeks ago, I knew. Whatever they were planning, it was going to happen this weekend. And I was going to be ready. The barbecue was on Saturday. I spent the morning working in the garage, trying to keep my mind off it. But I couldn't stop thinking about that text from Patricia. "He's still clueless. Let's see how far we can push him." I kept running it over in my head. What did she mean? What were they planning? Vanessa came out around noon. She was dressed casual, jeans and a tank top. She looked good. She always looked good. But I couldn't see her the same way anymore. "You ready?" she asked. "Yeah." We drove to Patricia's house in silence. Vanessa didn't try to make conversation. She just stared out the window and texted Jocelyn the whole way there. When we pulled up, the driveway was already full of cars. Jocelyn's sedan, Patricia's SUV, a few others I didn't recognize. Gerald was out front, setting up tables. He waved when he saw us but didn't say anything. Patricia was in the kitchen when we walked in. She had a tray of drinks in her hands. She smiled when she saw me. "Alexander, so glad you could make it." She set the tray down and gave me a hug. It lasted too long again. When she pulled back, she was still smiling. "I made something special for you," she said. "A cocktail, to hydrate my favorite son-in-law." She handed me a glass. It was bright red, smelled like fruit punch. I looked at it, then at her, then at Vanessa, who was standing behind me with her arms crossed. "What's in it?" I asked. Patricia laughed. "Just juice and a little something to help you relax. You've been so tense lately." I didn't drink it. I just held it. Jocelyn walked in then. She looked at the glass in my hand and grinned. "You're not going to drink it?" "Not yet." "Come on, Alex. Patricia made it special for you." I looked at the three of them. Vanessa, Jocelyn, Patricia. They were all watching me, waiting. And that's when I knew. This was the prank. This was the real one. Whatever was in that drink, it wasn't meant to help me relax. It was meant to do something else. Something worse. I set the glass down on the counter and smiled. "You know what? I'm not thirsty right now, but Gerald looks like he could use a drink." I picked up the glass and walked outside. Gerald was standing by the grill, flipping burgers. I handed him the glass. "Patricia made this for me, but I'm not a big cocktail guy. You want it?" He looked at the glass, then at me. You sure? Yeah, go ahead. He shrugged and took a sip. Then another. Then drained the whole thing. That's good, he said. She always makes good drinks. I went back inside. Patricia was still in the kitchen. She looked at me, then at the empty counter where the glass had been. Where's your drink? I gave it to Gerald. He seemed thirsty. Her smile faded, just a little, but enough for me to notice. You gave it to Gerald? Yeah. Why? Is that a problem? She didn't answer. She just turned and walked into the living room where Vanessa and Jocelyn were sitting. I followed. They were whispering when I walked in. Vanessa looked up at me with an expression I couldn't read. Jocelyn just stared. You gave the drink to my dad? She asked. Yeah, he liked it. Nobody said anything for a moment. Then Patricia laughed. It sounded forced. Well, that's fine. I can make you another one. I'm good, I said. I'll just have water. I went to the kitchen and poured myself a glass from the tap. The whole time I could feel them watching me. 37 minutes later, Gerald collapsed. I was outside when it happened. I heard Patricia scream. I ran inside and found Gerald on the floor clutching his stomach. His face was pale, his breathing was shallow. Call an ambulance, Patricia yelled. I pulled out my phone and dialed. The operator asked me what happened. I told her someone collapsed, that he'd been drinking something and now he couldn't breathe. The paramedics arrived in less than 10 minutes. They loaded Gerald onto a stretcher and took him to the hospital. Patricia went with him. Vanessa and Jocelyn stayed behind. I stood in the kitchen, staring at the empty glass on the counter, the one Gerald had drained. Vanessa walked in. She looked at me, then at the glass. What did you do? She whispered. I turned to face her. I didn't do anything. I gave him the drink your mom made for me, remember? The special cocktail? Her face went white. Jocelyn came in then. She looked at Vanessa, then at me. You switched the glasses. I didn't switch anything. I just gave it to Gerald. Patricia said it was special. Thought he might enjoy it. Jocelyn's hands were shaking. You knew. Knew what? She didn't answer. She just turned and walked out. Vanessa stayed. She stared at me for a long time. Then she spoke, and her voice was barely above a whisper. How long have you known? 3 weeks, I said, since you left me in that parking lot. She didn't say anything else. She just walked out of the kitchen and left me standing there alone. I stayed at the house for another hour, waited until I got a call from Patricia. Gerald was stable. They'd pumped his stomach. He was going to be okay. But whatever was in that drink had been strong. Strong enough to put a grown man in the hospital. Strong enough to do permanent damage if he'd been weaker. I left the house and drove home. I didn't say goodbye to anyone, I just got in my truck and left. When I got home, I sat in the driveway for a while. I thought about everything that had happened. About the prank. About the drink. About the way they'd all watched me, waiting for me to take that first sip. And I thought about what would have happened if I had. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat in the dark and stared at the wall. My hands weren't shaking anymore. My mind was clear. For the first time in years, I knew exactly what I needed to do. I didn't go back to Patricia's house. I didn't call Vanessa. I just went to work and kept my head down. But I couldn't stop thinking about that drink. About what would have happened if I'd been the one to drink it instead of Gerald. 3 days later, Patricia called me. I almost didn't answer, but something told me I should. Alexander, she said. Her voice was calm. Too calm. We need to talk. About what? About what happened at the barbecue. I didn't respond. Gerald's fine, by the way. In case you were wondering. I know. You called me from the hospital. Yes, I did. She paused. We need to talk about what you did. What I did? You gave him that drink on purpose. I laughed, I couldn't help it. You made that drink for me, Patricia, remember? You said it was special. I made it to help you relax, that's all. Then why did it put Gerald in the hospital? She didn't answer right away. When she finally spoke, her voice was ice. You need to come over tonight. We'll discuss this as a family. I don't think so. It wasn't a request, Alexander. I hung up. An hour later, Vanessa called. She was crying. Please come over, she said. My mom wants to talk to you. She's really upset. I'm sure she is. Alex, please, just come over. Let's figure this out. There's nothing to figure out. Your mom tried to poison me. I gave the drink to Gerald instead. That's it. She didn't try to poison you. God, you're so paranoid. Then what was in the drink, Vanessa? She went quiet. Exactly, I said. You don't know. And you don't care. You just want me to show up so your mom can spin this into my fault. That's not true, isn't it? She hung up. I went home that night and started packing. I didn't know where I was going yet, but I knew I couldn't stay in that house. Not with Vanessa. Not anymore. But before I could leave, there was a knock at the door. It was Jocelyn. She didn't wait for me to invite her in. She just walked past me and stood in the middle of the living room with her arms crossed. You need to fix this, she said. Fix what? What you did to my dad. I stared at her. I didn't do anything to your dad. I gave him the drink your mom made. If anyone needs to fix anything, it's her. You're twisting this. You know exactly what you did. Yeah, I do. I avoided whatever the hell was in that glass, and your dad paid the price. Jocelyn's face turned red. You're sick, you know that? You've always been paranoid, always thinking everyone's out to get you. Because you are. She laughed. We were just messing with you, Alex. That's all we've ever done. But you can't take a joke. You never could. Leaving me 200 miles from home isn't a joke. Drugging a drink isn't a joke. We didn't drug anything. Then what was in it? She didn't answer. That's what I thought. She stepped closer. You need to apologize. To my mom. To Vanessa. To all of us. I'm not apologizing for anything. Then you're done. Vanessa's going to leave you. My mom's going to make sure of it. Good, I said. Tell her to start the paperwork. Jocelyn stared at me for a long moment, then she turned and walked out without another word. I finished packing that night, threw everything into my truck and drove to a motel on the edge of town. I didn't tell anyone where I was going, I just needed space. Time to think. But the next morning, I got a call from my boss. Alexander, we need to talk. What's going on? I got a call this morning. From a woman named Patricia. She said you assaulted her husband. My blood ran cold. That's a lie. She said you forced him to drink something at a family barbecue, that he ended up in the hospital because of it. That's not what happened. Then what did happen? I told him. Everything, the prank, the drink. The way Patricia and Vanessa and Jocelyn had been treating me for weeks. By the time I finished, he was quiet. Look, Alexander, he said. I believe you. I do, but this woman filed a formal complaint with the company. She's threatening legal action if we don't let you go. You're firing me? I don't have a choice. She's got connections. She knows people on the board. If I don't let you go, she's going to make this a nightmare for everyone. So you're just going to throw me under the bus? I'm sorry, I really am, but my hands are tied. He hung up. I sat in that motel room for the rest of the day. I didn't eat, didn't sleep. I just stared at the ceiling and tried to figure out how everything had gone so wrong so fast. They weren't just messing with me anymore. They were trying to ruin me, and it was working. I spent the next few days trying to figure out my next move. I had some savings, enough to last a few months if I was careful. But I needed a plan. I needed to understand what they were really after. That's when I decided to dig deeper. I went back to the house when I knew Vanessa would be out. I searched every room, every drawer, every closet. And in the back of Vanessa's closet, buried under a pile of old shoes, I found something that changed everything. A camera, small, professional, the kind you'd use for surveillance. I took it out and examined it. There was a memory card inside. I pulled it out and put it in my pocket. Then I kept searching. I found 3 more cameras, one in the living room, one in the kitchen, one in the bedroom. They'd been watching me, recording me. For how long I didn't know, but long enough. I took all the cameras and left, drove back to the motel and plugged the memory card into my laptop. What I saw made my stomach turn. Hours of footage. Me working, me eating, me sleeping, me having conversations with Vanessa, me getting pranked, me reacting. And then I found a folder labeled Project Final Cut. I opened it. Inside were edited videos, clips of me looking angry, looking unstable, looking like someone who might snap at any moment. They were building a narrative, making me look dangerous, making me look like the problem. And at the bottom of the folder there was a document, a contract, between Patricia and a company called Velcrest Studios, for a reality show about family pranks. And my name was listed as the primary subject. I read the entire contract, every word, every clause. They'd been planning this for 3 years, since before the rest stop prank, since before any of it. They'd been setting me up, building a story, creating content. And I'd never known. I sat back in the chair and stared at the screen. This wasn't just about humiliation. This was about profit, about entertainment, about turning my life into a show. And they'd almost gotten away with it. But they made one mistake. They didn't think I'd find out. I copied everything onto a flash drive. Every video, every document, every piece of evidence. And then I started planning my next move. I stayed in that motel for another week. I didn't answer calls, didn't check emails. I just focused on understanding what I'd found. The contract was detailed. Patricia had signed it 3 years ago. She'd agreed to provide content for a reality show about family dynamics, about pushing someone to their breaking point, about seeing how much they could take before they snapped. The show was supposed to air next year. They were still in production, still gathering footage. And I was the star. I read through the terms. Patricia was getting paid $20,000 per episode. Vanessa and Jocelyn were getting $5,000 each. They'd been filming me for 3 years. That meant dozens of episodes, hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I'd signed nothing, given no consent, had no idea any of this was happening. I started going through the footage more carefully, looking for patterns, looking for evidence of when the cameras had been installed. I found the first video. It was dated 2 years and 8 months ago, right around the time they'd hidden my truck keys in the freezer. That had been the first prank they'd filmed, and every prank after that had been documented, edited, packaged for entertainment. I felt sick, but I kept watching, because I needed to know everything. In one video, I saw Patricia and Vanessa talking in the kitchen. The audio was clear. "He's so predictable," Vanessa said. "He never fights back." "That's what makes him perfect," Patricia replied. "The audience loves a pushover, someone they can root for or laugh at." "What about the drink? Are we really going to do that?" "It's just a sedative, nothing dangerous. He'll pass out for a few hours. We'll film his reaction when he wakes up. It'll be perfect for the season finale." "What if something goes wrong?" "It won't. I've done this before. Trust me." I paused the video and sat back. A sedative, that's what was in the drink. They were going to drug me, film me unconscious, use it as entertainment. And if I hadn't given it to Gerald, I would have been the one in the hospital. I kept digging. I found more videos, more conversations, more evidence of how calculated everything had been. In another video, Jocelyn was talking to Vanessa. "Do you think he suspects anything?" Jocelyn asked. "No. He's too trusting. He thinks we're just being mean. He has no idea we're filming." "What if he finds the cameras?" "He won't. And even if he does, we'll just tell him it's for security. He'll believe it." They laughed. I watched that video 3 times. Each time I felt something inside me harden. They didn't just think I was stupid. They were counting on it. But I wasn't stupid. I was just patient. And now I had everything I needed. I started making calls. First, I called a lawyer, a good one, someone who specialized in privacy law. I explained the situation, showed him the contract, showed him the videos, showed him everything. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "This is illegal, all of it. You never signed a release. They never got your consent. And they filmed you in private spaces. This is a slam dunk case. How much can I get?" "Depends on the damages, but we're talking 6 figures, maybe more. I don't want money, I want them to pay. They will, trust me." Next, I called Gerald's brother, Walter. I'd met him a few times at family gatherings. He lived in Idaho. We weren't close, but he seemed like a decent guy. I told him what I'd found, about the cameras, about the contract, about everything. He was silent for a long time. Then he said, "Gerald doesn't know, does he?" "I don't think so. I think Patricia's been hiding it from him." "That sounds like her. She's always been manipulative. But this is next level. I need your help. I need someone on the inside, someone Gerald trusts." "What do you need me to do?" "Talk to him. Tell him what's going on. He deserves to know." "I'll call him tonight." "Thank you." Walter called me back the next day. "I talked to Gerald," he said. "He had no idea. He's devastated. He's been going through Patricia's things. Found more evidence, bank statements, emails. She's been hiding money from him, using it to fund her lifestyle." "Is he going to do anything about it?" "He's filing for divorce, and he wants to help you. He said if you need a witness, he'll testify. Tell him thank you. He also said he's sorry for everything. It's not his fault. He knows, but he feels responsible. He should have seen what was happening. Nobody saw it, that was the point." Walter agreed to keep me updated, and over the next few days he sent me more information, more evidence, more pieces of the puzzle. I learned that Patricia had been planning this for years, that she'd pitched the show to multiple networks before Velcrest Studios agreed to produce it, that she'd promised them compelling content, a real-life drama, and she'd delivered. She'd turned my life into a product. But now I had all the cards. I had the footage, the contract, the witnesses, and I was going to use them. I reached out to Velcrest Studios directly. I sent them an email with copies of everything I'd found. I told them that if they aired a single second of footage, I'd sue them for everything they were worth. I got a response the next day. "We were unaware of the lack of consent. We are terminating the contract with Patricia immediately. All footage will be destroyed. We sincerely apologize for any harm caused." They were covering their asses. But I didn't care. As long as the show never aired, that was enough. Next, I went to the police. I filed a report: invasion of privacy, illegal surveillance, attempted assault with a sedative. They opened an investigation. And finally, I went to a local news station. I told them the story about a woman who'd tried to turn her son-in-law's life into a reality show without his knowledge, about the cameras, the pranks, the sedative. They wanted to run it. I gave them everything: the contract, the videos, the evidence. And 2 weeks later, it aired. The response was immediate. Social media exploded. People were outraged. Patricia's name was everywhere. So was Vanessa's. So was Jocelyn's. And within days, their lives started falling apart. Patricia lost her job. She worked as a consultant for a marketing firm, and they dropped her the moment the story broke. Vanessa's friends stopped calling. Her social media accounts were flooded with comments. She deleted everything. Jocelyn tried to defend them, posted a long rant about how the media was twisting the story, but nobody believed her. And Gerald? He finalized the divorce. Walter told me Gerald had been planning it for months, that he'd just been waiting for the right moment. The barbecue was the final straw. I stayed out of the spotlight. I didn't give interviews, didn't make statements. I just let the truth speak for itself. But there was one more thing I needed to do. I called Vanessa. She answered on the 3rd ring. "What do you want?" "I want to talk." "I don't have anything to say to you." "That's fine. I just need you to listen." She didn't hang up. So I kept going. I know you were in on it. I know you and your mom and Jocelyn were planning this for years. And I know you thought it was funny, that you thought I'd never find out. She didn't say anything. But here's the thing, Vanessa. You didn't just mess with me. You destroyed your own family. Your dad's leaving your mom. Your friends are gone. Your reputation's ruined. All because you thought it'd be fun to film me breaking down. It wasn't supposed to go this far, she whispered. But it did. And now you have to live with it. I hung up. I spent the next few weeks watching everything unfold from a distance. The news story picked up traction. National outlets started covering it. Patricia became a symbol of everything wrong with reality television, of exploitation, of cruelty disguised as entertainment. Vanessa tried to disappear. She stopped posting online, stopped going out. But the damage was done. Her name was attached to the story, and people didn't forget. Jocelyn moved to California, deleted all her accounts, changed her phone number. But even that didn't help. People recognized her, called her out. She couldn't escape what she'd done. And Patricia? She tried to fight back. She hired a lawyer, claimed I'd stolen the footage, that I'd edited it to make her look bad. But my lawyer was better. We filed a lawsuit, invasion of privacy, emotional distress, defamation, fraud, and we had all the evidence we needed. The trial lasted 3 months. Patricia's lawyer tried to argue that I'd known about the cameras, that I'd given implied consent by staying in the house. But we had the contract, the one that explicitly listed me as an unwitting participant, the one that outlined how they were supposed to keep everything secret. We had the videos, the unedited footage showing Patricia and Vanessa discussing how clueless I was, how easy I was to manipulate. We had the sedative, the lab results showing what was in the drink, what it would have done to me if I'd consumed it. And we had Gerald. He testified, told the court everything he'd found, every hidden bank account, every lie Patricia had told him over the years. By the time we were done, there was no question. The jury ruled in my favor. Patricia was ordered to pay me $300,000 in damages. Vanessa and Jocelyn were ordered to pay $50,000 each. But more than that, the judge issued a restraining order. They weren't allowed within 500 feet of me. Ever. Patricia's face went white when the verdict was read. Vanessa looked like she might be sick. Jocelyn just stared at the floor. My lawyer leaned over and whispered, "That's it. You won." I nodded, but I didn't feel like celebrating. We left the courtroom. As I walked down the steps, I saw Gerald standing by the entrance. He looked older than I remembered. Tired. "Alexander," he said. "Gerald, I'm sorry for everything. It's not your fault. I should have known. I should have stopped it. You couldn't have known. They hid it from everyone." He looked down at his hands. "I finalized the divorce last month. I heard. I'm sorry. Don't be. It's been a long time coming." He looked up at me. "What are you going to do now?" "I don't know yet. Maybe leave Spokane. Start over somewhere else." "That's probably a good idea." We stood there for a moment. Then he held out his hand. I shook it. "Take care of yourself, Alexander." "You too, Gerald." He walked away. I watched him go, and then I got in my truck and drove. I didn't go back to the house, didn't go back to the motel. I just drove. No destination, no plan, just open road. Somewhere outside the city, I pulled over and sat in the truck for a while. I thought about everything that had happened, the pranks, the betrayal, the lies, and I thought about how different my life was going to be now. No wife, no job, no family, but also no cameras, no manipulation, no games. I started the truck and kept driving. I drove for hours, through small towns and open highways, past farms and forests, until I reached the Oregon border. I stopped at a rest area and got out, stretched my legs, looked up at the sky. It was clear. No clouds, just blue stretching out forever. I took a deep breath and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Relief. I got back in the truck and kept going. South, toward Portland, toward something new. I didn't know what I was going to do when I got there. Didn't know where I'd stay or how I'd make money. But I knew I'd figure it out. Because for the first time in years, I was free. Free from the lies. Free from the manipulation. Free from the people who'd spent 3 years trying to break me. And they'd failed. They'd tried to turn my life into a show. Tried to make me the villain. Tried to ruin me. But in the end, they'd only ruined themselves. And I was still standing. I reached Portland just after sunset. Found a cheap motel near the river. Checked in. Dropped my bag on the bed and sat down. My phone buzzed. A text from Walter. Gerald wanted me to tell you something. He said you're a stronger man than he ever was, and that he hopes you find peace. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed back. Tell him thank you, and that I hope he finds it too. I set the phone down and looked out the window. The city lights were starting to come on. People were going about their lives, working, eating, laughing, and I realized I could be one of them. I could start over, build something new, something real, something that was mine. I didn't know what that looked like yet, but I had time to figure it out. For the first time in years, I had all the time in the world. I stayed in Portland for 6 months, found a small apartment near the river, got a job with a construction company that didn't ask too many questions about my past, kept my head down, lived quietly, but I wasn't hiding. I was rebuilding. I went to therapy, talked about what had happened, about the betrayal, about the anger I'd been carrying. It helped. Not completely, but enough. I made new friends. People who didn't know anything about Spokane or Patricia or the trial. People who just knew me as Alexander, the guy who worked construction and liked to fish on weekends. I started to feel like myself again. Or maybe I started to feel like a new version of myself. Someone who didn't let people walk all over him. Someone who knew his worth. And then one day, I got a call from my lawyer. Alexander, I have news. What is it? Patricia's appealing the verdict. She's claiming the trial was unfair, that the evidence was obtained illegally. I sat down. Can she do that? She can try, but she won't win. We have everything documented. The appeal process will take time, but the verdict will stand. How long? 6 months, maybe a year. I thanked him and hung up. I wasn't worried. I'd done everything by the book, but it reminded me that this wasn't over. Not yet. A few weeks later, Walter called. Gerald wants to see you, he said. Why? He has something to give you. He wouldn't tell me what, but he said it's important. I thought about it. I hadn't seen Gerald since the trial. Hadn't talked to him much either, but I trusted him. So I agreed. We met at a diner halfway between Portland and Spokane. Gerald was already there when I arrived. He looked better, healthier. There was color in his face again. Alexander, he said, standing up to shake my hand. Gerald, you look good. I feel good, better than I have in years. We sat down, ordered coffee, made small talk for a few minutes. Then Gerald pulled out an envelope and slid it across the table. What's this? I asked. Open it. I opened the envelope. Inside was a check, made out to me, for $100,000. I looked up at him. What is this? Patricia had a life insurance policy, one she took out years ago. Gerald was the beneficiary, but when we got divorced, he transferred it to me. This is half of what he got when it matured. Gerald, I can't take this. Yes, you can. You deserve it. After everything they put you through, after everything I let happen. You didn't let anything happen. You didn't know. I should have known. I should have paid more attention. But I didn't, and you paid the price. I stared at the check. This is too much. It's not enough, but it's what I have to give. I looked at him, really looked at him, and I saw something I hadn't seen before. Regret, but also resolve. "Thank you," I said. "Use it to build something good, something that's yours." I nodded. "I will." We finished our coffee, talked for a while longer, about his new life, about the woman he'd been seeing, about how different everything felt now. And when we finally said goodbye, it felt like closure, not just for him, but for both of us. I drove back to Portland with the check in my pocket, and for the first time since this whole thing started, I felt hopeful. Not just hopeful that things would get better, but hopeful that they already were. Patricia's appeal failed, just like my lawyer said it would. The verdict stood, and she was forced to pay every cent. Vanessa moved out of state. Walter told me she was living in Arizona now, working at a retail store, keeping to herself. Jocelyn stayed in California, changed her name, tried to disappear. And Patricia? She lost everything. Her job, her money, her reputation. She ended up living with a cousin in Nevada, working part-time, bitter and alone. They'd all paid the price for what they'd done, and I was okay with that. I used Gerald's money to start my own business, a small construction company, just me and a couple of guys I'd met in Portland. We did residential work mostly, renovations, additions, honest work. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine, and that meant everything. I met someone too, a woman named Harper. She worked at a bakery down the street from my apartment. We started talking one morning when I stopped in for coffee. She asked me where I was from. I told her it was complicated. She laughed and said she understood. We started seeing each other. Nothing serious at first, just coffee, walks along the river, late-night conversations about life and mistakes and second chances. She didn't ask about my past, didn't push. She just let me be. And for the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. One night we were sitting on the riverbank watching the sun go down. She turned to me and asked, "Are you happy?" I thought about it, really thought about it. "Yeah," I said. "I think I am." She smiled. "Good." We sat there in silence for a while, and then I said, "I used to think happiness was about holding on to people, about staying loyal no matter what, but I was wrong. What do you think it's about now? Knowing when to let go?" She nodded. "That's hard." "Yeah, but it's worth it." We stayed there until the stars came out, and when we finally left, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. A year after the trial, I got a message from Vanessa. It was short. "I'm sorry for everything. I know it doesn't change anything, but I needed to say it." I read it twice, then I deleted it. I didn't need her apology, didn't need closure from her. I'd already found it on my own. Walter kept me updated on Gerald. He was doing well, still seeing the woman from the bookstore. They'd gotten engaged. He seemed happy. I was happy for him. And as for me, I kept building. My business grew. I hired more people, took on bigger projects, made a name for myself in Portland. I bought a house. Nothing fancy, just a small place with a yard and a view of the river. Harper moved in with me after a year. We talked about getting married, maybe having kids someday. I didn't think about Spokane much anymore. Didn't think about Patricia or Vanessa or Jocelyn. They were part of my past, and I'd left my past behind. But every once in a while I'd think about that barbecue, about the drink, about the moment I handed it to Gerald instead of drinking it myself, and I'd realize how close I'd come to losing everything. But I didn't lose. I survived. And more than that, I learned. I learned that loyalty without boundaries is just martyrdom, that love without respect is just abuse, that family doesn't mean anything if it's built on lies. I learned that sometimes the people who hurt you the most are the ones who claim to love you. And I learned that walking away isn't giving up. It's choosing yourself. Patricia never recovered from the scandal. The lawsuit drained most of her savings, and the publicity destroyed what remained of her reputation. She tried to restart her consulting business in Nevada, but word traveled fast. Clients refused to work with her. Friends distanced themselves. She ended up working part-time at a grocery store, bitter and isolated, blaming everyone but herself for the life she'd ruined. Vanessa struggled to move on. The weight of her choices crushed her social life and any career prospects she had. She tried therapy, tried to explain herself in online essays, but the damage was done. People remembered her as the woman who filmed her husband suffering for entertainment. She eventually moved to a smaller town in Arizona where no one knew her name, living quietly and alone, haunted by the role she'd played in destroying not just my life but her own. Jocelyn faded into obscurity in California. She changed her name, deleted every trace of her online presence, and worked low-profile jobs to survive. She never apologized, never reached out. She just vanished, carrying the shame of what she'd done like a weight she couldn't put down. I learned that betrayal doesn't always come from strangers. Sometimes it comes from the people you love most. But I also learned that survival isn't about revenge. It's about reclaiming your life, one honest step at a time.